And there should be a de-addiction centers inside the prisons, and training of the jail staff on the psychology test or tools should be used at the time of admission of the prisoner to gauge the status of interventions and appropriate time. There is a Tamil Nadu model which everybody wants, Tamil Nadu model, which has a psychologist, counselor and social, and a separate wing should be established in each prison to keep staff should be trained adequately. So the third section is regarding the use of technology in correction. Thank you very much, sir. Jai.
Vanita Ji, Director General of Prisons and Correctional Services, Andhra Pradesh, all the stakeholders. So the 8th National Conference of the Heads of Prisons of States and UTs has been organized by the BPRLE in active collaboration with the Andhra Pradesh Prisons Department. Our gratitude to them. And the theme that we have given to ourselves is prisons and correctional prisons with the use of the latest technology. The drafting of Ms. Kaneti Vanita Ji also addressed the August gathering yesterday. So, interest in the issues pertaining to the prisons and correctional administration. I'm also grateful to the Honorable Minister.
The Honorable Home Minister of Andhra Pradesh to kindly present. Now I request the Honorable Sir to kindly give his valuable address to this August House.
Heads of the prisons of various states and union territories, distinguished delegates, invitees, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, I extend my warm greetings to you all. It gives me immense pleasure to be here today amidst you all on the occasion of valedictory session of the 8th National Conference of Heads of Prisons of all states and union territories on the theme of Prisons and Correctional Services in Amrit Kaal, organized jointly by Bureau of Police Research and Development, New Delhi, and Andhra Pradesh Prisons Department. Addressing the nation during 75th Independence Day celebrations in 2021.
Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji laid out a new roadmap for a resurgent India for the next 25 years by naming it as the Amrit Kaal. The Prime Minister called this period as a culmination of hard work, sacrifice and austerity, and said that this is a period of 25 years to get back what our society has lost in hundreds of years. Fyodor Dostoevsky, the great Russian novelist of the world literature and author of the famous novel Crime and Punishment, once said, and I quote, "The degree of civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons," unquote. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a prison as a place properly arranged and equipped for the reception of persons who by legal process are committed to it for safe custody while awaiting trial and punishment. Now I will take you to the Kautilya days. Kautilya's Arthashastra
Prison was merely a holding place for people between two phases of judicial process, sentencing and implementing punishment, and not a penalty in itself. For all but gravest offences, the accused was offered an alternative between a punishment and a monetary equivalent. Imprisonment does not figure as a punishment in the list of penalties prescribed by the Arthashastra. However, it is noteworthy that most of the sections of Arthashastra regarding prisons focus on the prisoner's welfare, such as men and women were to be detained separately, wells, latrines, and bathing facilities were to be built, and the prisoners were to be protected from fire and venomous creatures. Fines are imposed on guards who tortured and tormented the prisoners in any way. The same fine or punishment is imposed if guard binds the prisoner, one who ordered such actions. There were also severe fines for outraging the modesty of women prisoners. On special occasions such as the birth of a prince, the heir's coronation, conquest of a new territory, etc., all the prisoners were to be released. These key features of prison administration found in Kautilya's Arthashastra highlight the fact that basic human rights are granted to all the prisoners, and importance is given to the safety and health of detainees in a striking resemblance to the prison reforms advocated today. Here I am reminded of Elizabeth Fry, an English prison and social reformer, who said, and I quote, "Punishment is not for revenge. Punishment is not for revenge, but to lessen the crime and reform the criminal. Punishment is not for revenge, but to lessen the crime and reform the criminal," unquote. The British reformer John Howard toured Europe to observe prison conditions, and in his book, The State of Prisons in England and Wales, written in 1777, influenced the passage of a law that led to the construction of the first British prisons designed partly for reform. These prisons attempted to make their inmates feel penitent and serious. That is, sorry for doing wrong. Penitent means. As you are all aware, the contemporary prison administration in India is a legacy of British rule. Lord Macaulay, while presenting a note to the Legislative Council in India on December 21, 1835, for the first time pointed out the terrible inhuman conditions prevalent in Indian prisons, and he termed it as shocking to humanity. After prolonged deliberation, several commissions of inquiry, the Prisons Act of 1894 came into existence, which is the current law governing management and administration of prisons in India. It has remained in force for over 129 years, including 76 years after our independence. It has hardly undergone any substantial change during all these years, despite of new thinking having emerged in respect of objectives, management, and administration of prisons. The Supreme Court Committee on Prison Reforms, constituted in 2018, headed by Justice Amitava Roy, in its report submitted to the court in December 2022, has addressed pressing concerns within the jails of violence between inmates, unnatural deaths of prisoners, concept of semi-open and open jails, and vacancies in prison staff and correctional administration. The report also dealt with less explored themes of psychological aspects of women prisoners, separate infrastructure including toilets for transgender prisoners, need for medical facilities for sick and old prisoners, and treatment for death row convicts. The Supreme Court felt the need to include 3 other issues in the ambit of reforms, including availability of medical facilities for inmates in jail, particularly with regard to telemedicine, and doctor consultation through video conferencing to do away with the hassle of taking prisoners to penal hospitals. The other issue is related to occasional training for prisoners to enable their reintegration into the society, and lastly, the availability of information technology infrastructure within jails to enable prisoners to have video calls with family members. The Supreme Court also flagged the issue of replanning and relocation of jails by shifting them out of the city. The Model Prisons Act 2023, prepared by the Ministry of Home Affairs, is going to replace the British era law, the Prisons Act 1894. The new law is expected to overhaul the prison administration and focus on reformation and rehabilitation of inmates. The provisions of Prisons Act of 1900 and the Transfer of Prisoners Act of 1950 have also been assimilated into the Model Prisons Act 2023 and is expected to bring the much needed reforms to the Indian prison administration system and align it with international conventions and standards. The Model Prisons Act 2023 also addresses various suggestions and recommendations made by Justice Mulla Committee of 1983, Justice B.R. Krishnaiyer Committee on Women Prisoners of 1987, the Committee of the Director General of Bureau of Police Research Development of 2005. I hope the two-day conference offered an opportunity to participants to share their views and knowledge on prison administration and prison reforms, and they had an enlightened discussion on various issues concerning development of prisons and improvement of their conditions. I find the themes chosen for deliberation during the conference as very comprehensive in nature and focusing more on the prison reforms and administration in a holistic way. I was informed that the conference has deliberated on the use of technology in correctional administration. The profound impact of technology in the realm of correctional administration is a paradigm shift and will certainly usher in a new era of enhanced security, efficiency, and rehabilitation. The critical issue of mental health of inmates requires more focus, and every individual, regardless of their circumstances, deserves access to proper mental health care. The challenge of overcrowding in prisons and the pursuit of alternative forms of incarceration is important for reforms in prison administration. According to the available data, the prisons in India are overcrowded to the extent of 129%. This is overall, but in some places like Delhi it is 200-300%. In this context, it is important to explore alternative incarceration methods such as community-based programs and restorative justice initiatives. Another important issue that was discussed during the conference relates to conditions of women inmates and children. The harsh realities faced by these vulnerable sections within the criminal justice system highlights the critical need for a more emphatic and gender-sensitive approach. It is our collective responsibility to advocate for reforms, policies and practices that prioritize rehabilitation, support and healing. De-addiction programs in correctional administration is another critical issue for prison reforms. The power of intervention and the treatment programs offer a hope and possibility of a new beginning for them. Let us carry forward with the conviction that every individual, regardless of their past, deserves a chance at recovery and lead a better life. Prison reforms and innovative interventions will certainly give a new path for correctional administration. I am pleased to note that Bureau of Police Research and Development has contributed enormously to improving prison administration in the country by organizing conferences and seminars on various aspects of correctional administration with modern approach and to find solutions to the persisting problems in correctional administration. The key role played by them in the capacity building of the police and prison personnel is appreciable. I am glad to know that the Andhra Pradesh Prisons Department stands as a model to other states in the country, as it is first state to introduce virtual production of inmates before the courts through video conference. The department has also taken several steps in prison administration by extending free corporate medical facility to prisoners under YSR Arogya Shri scheme, technological interventions, skill development programs for inmates, etc., thus making a positive impact on the well-being of inmates and improving quality of prison environment. Before concluding, I once again quote Fyodor Dostoevsky, who said, and I quote, "The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he is in prison." Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Valuable insights during your address has enriched this conference. Platform to work more resolutely towards a better prison administration, unitive to reformative approach. Your insights will be guiding. I also extend our gratitude and thanks to Honorable Home Minister of Andhra Pradesh and mandatory session of this conference. She has been very supportive of the issues of us who have taken part in this conference.